Yes, I'm still here, Hollywood. And coming up on today's episode...
He's one of those actors who makes people pause for a second and think, do I know him? Or have I just seen him on TV my whole life? For more than 30 years, he's been the familiar face who anchors scenes, elevates stories, and brings quiet brilliance to roles big and small. He's worked with just about everyone, appeared in just about everything, and built a career that proves supporting actors often leave the strongest impression. This is Still Here Hollywood. I'm Steve Kmetko. Join me with today's guest, actor Spencer Garrett. So how are you?
I'm great. I'm really happy to see you in person. And I said when I came in and sat down, I said, I feel like I grew up with you in a sense. I mean, I grew up watching you and,
But I haven't grown up.
But you haven't grown up. and thank goodness, like Peter Pan, I don't want to grow up either.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. I don't want to grow up, but it happens.
I'm glad you said that to me. That was really very nice. But I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I've gone through the period. I'm 72 now, and I've gone through a period where it's like, what did my life mean? What is my life? I'm doing a lot of reflection, and it's like, did anybody ever see me or know? Did I help anybody?
Oh, gosh, yes. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. It's just, and I'm not looking for false praise. I'm just, I think everybody must go through that at some point.
Yeah, I'm going through it. I'm right there with you, brother. Okay. I really am. I'm 62, and
you win again.
only by a mere 10. But I've been doing this a long time, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I feel like I've been really lucky to have stayed working consistently for a long time, and I feel like I'm just kind of figuring out how to be a good actor. I know that sounds, and I'm not. It's not false modesty. I'm just kind of I feel like I'm just finding a bit of a sweet spot, and I'm always trying to learn, and I'm always trying to get better. But I feel like I'm just kind of like in my groove now.
Okay, one of the things you said when you sat down was, before we start, did you have any idea who I was?
I mean,
why do you ask that?
I guess I ask that because I have a lot of friends, and we'll probably talk about at some point this group that I have, the CADS. It's a wonderful group of character actors that I am blessed and honored to know and spend time with. And I have a lot of friends who have done extremely well in the business. I've never felt like I was in the cool kids club, I guess, is what I meant by that. I've never felt like I feel like I'm sort of been... well, not to get too shrinky, but I think a lot of time I felt like I was kind of on the outside of the window looking in at all of the shiny stuff and wondering when do the bells ring for me, I guess. And so it's always lovely when people come up to me and say, hey, I just saw you on something or other and you were terrific. Or people stop me in an airport and, I joked earlier, I said, I'm that guy from that thing. And,
which is what your tombstone is going to say.
Which my tombstone's going to say, either that or offer only. But yeah, I'm that guy from that thing. I think I've never. I don't think I will ever be a star, and I've kind of made my peace with that. I'm happy to be a consistently working. I'm a working actor, which is all I ever really set out to be. I've always wanted to be just a working actor. My grandparents were actors. My mom's an actor, and they did very well at it, and I'm happy to be at this point with the way the industry is now, and I'm happy and lucky and fortunate to be just in the ball game. And
my tombstone's going to say it's taken me a lifetime to get where I am today.
That's another good one. I'll put that on my list.
Tell me about CADS.
Oh, the CADS. Oh, gosh. I don't know where to start. My brothers, the CADS kind of started, I'll give you a nutshell story, but the CADS kind of started, Alfred Molina, who has been here as well, genuinely one of the nicest, loveliest humans you will ever meet. And I met him years and years ago, probably actually it was around that same time that I did The Real Thing. We did a radio play production of The Lion in Winter. and we became friends. And then he was teaching a Shakespeare course, and I was taking classes from him. We became pals, and have remained pals ever since. We kept running into each other. We kept bouncing into each other at various places around town. And every once in a while, he would text me because he's such a lovely man. He would say, "How's your mom? How's your mom?" He would check in on my mom, see how she was doing. And I said, let's actually like sit down and have a cocktail one time and talk about our lives. We hadn't socialized. And so he called me up and he said, "Do you know Steven Weber?" And I said, "Yeah, I know Weber." He said, "Do you mind if we bring Weber to our little cocktail gathering?" And I said, "Sure." And then Weber called me and said, "Do you know Eric McCormack?" And I said, "Sure. I'm going to bring Eric McCormack." One thing led to another. Before we knew it, we had these 6 guys, and it was Alfred and Weber and McCormack and Titus Welliver, who's another old friend. You should talk to Titus sometime. He's got stories galore. And Lawrence Fishburne. I think that was 6 of us, and we were sitting at a little booth in Musso and Frank's, and we looked around at each other and went, "Wow, this is a nice group of guys. Why don't we do this again?" And we did it again and again, but I think it was that night that Alfred, we should give ourselves a name, and we were batting around a couple of different names, and I think it was Fred that came up with the Character Actors Dining Society. So we sort of dubbed ourselves the CADS. And then eventually we would fold in another gent. It was Kevin Pollak the following week, and Richard Kind and Jason Alexander. And there's sort of a kind of a core group of about 12 of us, and we started going around to different restaurants and having dinner. We started off at Musso's, and then we eventually outgrew the table. And then we would go to another place, and the larger we got, Michael McKeon and Michael Nouri and Paul McCrane. And we would outgrow these tables until we finally had to find a place with a larger table. We need a bigger boat. And it's not just a bunch of well-known folks that sit around and eat and drink. It's really become a support group, a group of guys that really genuinely, I didn't know Pollak before. I didn't know Michael McKeon. I didn't know several of the folks that are now a part of this group, but I look around, I go, Michael McKeon, like the body of work of that man, and how much I've learned from him and stolen from him and watched him as an artist over the years, and Kevin Pollak. These are guys that we all have either worked with each other or know one another, or have spent time with each other at various points over the years. I met Pollak through Weber and Richard Kind, and so we asked Kevin to join us at dinner, and he's a guy that I've admired forever. And it's become, the text chain is miles and miles long. We've been doing this for 7 years now. We did it during over Zoom, when everybody was, during COVID, when everybody was shut down, and we were having dinners in our homes over Zoom with each other. What are you cooking tonight? What are you watching on the Criterion Channel tonight? And we would sit and we would watch movies together over Zoom in our various homes and talk about movies. And we talk about movies and politics. And more than anything, though, for me, it's a group of guys that just really love each other and admire each other and look out for each other. If anybody's going through something, we're right there for each other. And I didn't have that. I didn't grow up with brothers and sisters, and so they've become extended family to me and brothers to me. And it's a really special gang.
It's a good family to have.
It's a really good family to have. Yeah.
Kevin, I always think of The Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
When I think of Kevin.
He's so wonderful in everything. One of the funniest human beings. I mean, sometimes I would look around the table and I'd see between Richard Kind and Jason and Kevin and Weber, some of the funniest humans that I know. And I like to think I'm a funny fella from time to time, but you sit around a table with those guys and I just sit back in awe and I just laugh. I just laugh my face off because they're just the jokes that fly and the stories that are told are incredible. So it's a really lovely group.
And your mother worked with Richard Crenna.
Yes.
Walter Brennan.
Yep.
On a show called, a classic.
Yes.
The Real McCoys.
The Real McCoys. Yep. Yeah, was with her last night. 92 years young.
No kidding.
Yeah, 92 years young.
Good for her.
She looks fantastic, and she's still looking for her next gig. You know,
she?
she's still in the ball game too. Yeah, she's a pistol. So
That's the working part of a working actor.
that's the working part of a working actor. Sure.
How much do you enjoy it? And how did you get into it? Is it just because of your family?
I mean, how much do I enjoy it? I can't tell you how much I enjoy it enough. The day that I stop enjoying it is the day that I will hang up my spurs and ride off into the sunset. Every time I pull onto a lot, every time I pull onto the Warner Brothers lot or where we are now, I spent a lot of time across the street at CBS. Whenever I pull onto that Warner Brothers lot and see that water tower and pull into my little parking spot, I go, gosh, I get to do this today. I get to be an actor today. It still thrills me every single time, every job, no matter what it is, and I know this sounds hokey, but like no matter how big or how small, everything I do, every chance I get to be on a set, I'm like a kid in a candy store, just fortunate to be able to keep doing it.
Did your family push you into it at all?
Not at all, not at all. My grandparents, my grandma and grandpa worked on a showboat on the Mississippi River called the Goldenrod Showboat, which was docked in St. Louis, and there was a theater on the showboat. And my grandparents were actors, and my mom and her sister Nancy Devlin, they were both actors. And at one point, my aunt went off to New York to become an actor, went to the American Academy. My mom went to New York, and shortly thereafter got Peter Pan on Broadway. And so, I'm a third generation. And I always joke that if I had the sense God gave a donut, I probably would have gone into something a little bit more stable. But I wasn't pushed into it at all. It was what I knew growing up as a kid. In the early to mid 70s, when Mom was president of the Screen Actors Guild, there were a lot of people in the industry around the house all the time, and just hot and cold running actors coming through the house all the time. So that's what I knew, and I also knew. I knew what a roller coaster ride it was. I knew what a roller coaster ride it was for my mom. She was a single parent. My folks split when I was young, and Mom raised me. And it was a lot of this going up and down with her career, and seeing that. And when I finally decided in my mid-20s to say, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna give this a shot. I don't know if I'm any good at it or not, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna open the door and see if I can make a go at the family business. But nobody pushed me. I thought I had some genetic chops just through osmosis, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna give it a go. And so I studied. I studied with Mr. Meisner and did a lot of theater in New York, and finally took a whack and came out here in 87. I moved out here. 88 I came out here, and I've been grinding away,
plugging away since.
Yeah, plugging away happily.
What's the point at which you went, oh, I can do this? Is there a particular project you worked on, or movie or television show?
I wouldn't say there was one thing that. I think it was when I started to, when you're going up that roller coaster and you hear the click, 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 and when things started to click, and I kind of felt like, oh, it's not just one or two jobs every year. It was starting to turn into more work, and I thought there was more consistency to the amount of work that I was getting, and I thought, all right, I'm in, I'm all in. There was one point, probably in the mid '90s, and there was a sort of a lull, and I had an opportunity. I was offered an opportunity to go teach at the university where I went to school. I went to Duke University for a few years in North Carolina, and I had an opportunity to go back and teach. And I was almost ready to pack my bags and just say, all right, I've had a good run here. I gave it a shot, and just when I thought I was out,
they pulled me back
in, and I got a Air Force One, and I got a couple of jobs that made me go, oh, I just got invited to sit at the grown-ups table. I'm gonna see what that's like for a little while, and then things started to kind of coalesce from there.
What type of role would you say you're most likely to be hired for?
Oh boy, can I say a word that starts with P and rhymes with schmick? I was the go-to prick in a suit for a long time. I got cast as pricks in suits. I was the smarmy yuppie.
Write an autobiography and name it that.
Prick in a suit.
Prick in a suit. Yeah.
The life of a prick in a suit. I got cast as a lot of kind of callow, smarmy, yuppie lawyers early on, kind of one right after the other, and that sort of became my little niche. And I don't know if I was typecast as that, but that seemed to be the guy that I got cast as a lot, and I made a decent little living at it, but then it started to get boring, Then I thought, okay, there's got to be more to being an actor than this, because that's what people started to think of me as for a long time, and that's when I started to think, all right, maybe I need to figure out a way to reinvent myself.
And did you?
I didn't reinvent myself, but I was kind of reinvented to a certain extent by I went in to read for a movie called Public Enemies. At this point, this is up until about 2007, and I'd been working pretty consistently. I'd been doing okay. And in 2007, I was brought in by Bonnie Timmerman, great casting director, for Michael Mann, to read for a movie called Public Enemies. And she brought me in to read for a role that was quite character-y, and he was like an ex-boxer and a getaway car driver, and it was just very different than a lot of the stuff that I'd done up to that point. And I remember going up to her and saying, I said, Bonnie, can I read for the lawyer or the FBI guy, the prick in the suit? And she said, I've been watching you for a long time, and I've been seeing you do that for a very long time. Don't you want to try to do something else? And I'm giving you an opportunity to do something else. Why don't you come back tomorrow, get more prepared than you were today? She said, I don't want you to read for the one scene as FBI guy number 2 or whatever. And so I came back the next day, and I read for this role for Michael Mann. And I kind of marked that as a kind of a hash mark career-wise that kind of changed the trajectory a little bit. I started to get into I sort of grew into my face a little bit more, even into the late 80s, early 90s, early 2000s. I always sort of looked a lot younger than I was, and so when I got cast as that guy, and at that point I was probably 40, and that kind of put me in a different realm. I like to think that allowed me to do more sort of character parts, which is now what I only and always want to do.
40 gets a bad rap. I think I had a doctor once who told me, you're entering your 40s, you're entering the most lucrative period of your life.
Yeah.
Really? And I enjoyed my 40s. I liked them a lot.
I did too. I feel like I kind of came into my own in my 40s. It took me a little while to get there. I sort of grew up. I'd gone through some relationships, and it's interesting. I had a conversation the other night with an actor that I really admire, Rufus Sewell, who I'd watched for many, many years. And there have been a lot of tributes lately to Tom Stoppard, the great playwright. And I kind of mark that year, my 40th year as well. I got cast in a play, a production of The Real Thing, my favorite Tom Stoppard play probably. And it was a really emotional role. And I was going through a relationship situation in my life that was really kind of cracking my heart open in a lot of different ways. And the stuff that I'd been cast in before never really allowed me to delve much deeper than I had gone before. I'd gotten cast in a lot of different kinds of things, but I feel like I never was really able to access certain parts of here. And when I got cast in that play, while I was going through this breakup, for whatever reason, it just it opened up a portal, and it allowed me to get to some emotional parts of myself that I hadn't heretofore been able to find. So I credit that experience with that play as I turned 40, doing that play and finding a different part of myself that I had kind of closed off, I guess, or hadn't allowed myself to get to. And once I did that play, and I was on stage every night cracking my heart open in front of an audience, from that point on, I was able to find that, and it made me a better actor. It made me a better person. I wrote a post about it, and I said, I was able to tell Rufus the other night, I said, doing that play made me not just a better actor, but it made me a better man. And that kind of changed the trajectory as well, and that also led to Public Enemies and some other things that were more charactery, that were more emotional, that had more depth to them, more nuance. Yeah.
Have you seen a therapist?
Have I seen a therapist?
Yes.
Oh, I have. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a couple.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah. I do too. I've seen a couple. Yeah.
Because if you're on stage cracking open your heart and your mind along with it.
Yes. Yeah.
It helps to have.
I also, and I grew up with an actress mother with actor grandparents in a very, very volatile, unstable business with parents who divorced when I was very young. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to mine there. So I've spent some time on a few couches and a few comfy chairs like this, and I definitely recommend it too.
We'll be back in a moment. If you'd like to be more involved with us at Still Here Hollywood, you definitely can. Just visit patreon.com/stillherehollywood. You can support us for as little as $3 a month. You can get our episodes a day before they post anywhere else. You can see what guests will be coming up and submit questions for them. You can even tell us what stars you want us to have on as guests. You'll see what goes on before and after the episode, plus exclusive behind-the-scenes info, pics, video, and more. Again, that's patreon.com/stillherehollywood. Tell me this, if you can. What's the difference between a character actor and a supporting actor? Is there a difference?
I don't think so. I think the supporting actors, I mean, the guys, if you look at a movie like All the President's Men or Dog Day Afternoon and the Charles Durnings and the Jack Wardens and the Vincent Gardenias, people like that you think of as character actors, but I watched All the President's Men a million times, and I watched it again recently, so that's why that example came to mind. But you look around that scene where they're all in the office with Ben Bradley and all of these wonderful character actors, Marty Balsam, they're supporting the main thrust of the story, but they're the guys that always make the movie better. It's the Chris Coopers and the David Morses, and it's like the people that are not the stars, hearkening back to what I said earlier, like I like to think that I'm a guy as a supporting actor who's also a character actor. I play characters, and we're the guys that come in off the bench and hopefully make the story better. So I don't think there's much difference. I think the character actors are the supporting, are the support beams that keep the house up
and hold the movie together.
More
times than not.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
and make it better.
I mean, you look at Gene Hackman in his early stuff in Bonnie and Clyde. This was a guy that wasn't a traditional movie star looking face, and he was a character man who went on to become a star. In that time period in the 70s, the late 60s, early 70s, when the studio system went away, and then all of a sudden you had the Gene Hackmans and the Robert Duvalls and Dustin Hoffmans, people that weren't traditional movie star looking guys that became the guys. They became the stars of their vehicles. So to see character actors become the fulcrum of the thing that makes the machine go, that was inspiring to me. So those were the guys that I watched growing up, going back and being an avid TCM watcher. I always look at the end credits, and you look at the names. Louis Calhern. You see these old names, and you look at those. Those are the guys that worked forever. Those are the guys that had these long careers. And I remember thinking, all right, I'm not going to be a movie star, but I want to be the guy that is part of that team that keeps the machine going, and stays working. And those are the guys that you saw had these long, wonderful careers. And so I'd like to think that's the place that I've made for myself.
Have you ever regretted not being the star, the name above the title, star?
Maybe at times, maybe early on, but then I also the responsibility of being number one on the call sheet is a whole other beast. I've done it a couple of times on some indie films and some smaller things that I've done, and it's a wonderful thing to be. But regrets about it? I don't think I've had any regrets about not being the star. I like being part of the team. I like being part of a group of artists that make something. So if I'm not the main guy, I'm okay with that. It would be nice to have a go at it one of these days. But I think at a certain point, I thought, all right, I'm the guy that gets the call to, like I said, to come in off the bench, and I like to think that I've got a reputation as a good person who treats people well, who shows up on time, knows his lines, as a professional, and you don't see a lot of that often. And I think the guys that are the professionals that act professionally, and I try to know the names of all the crew members by the time I'm finished with a gig and know who everybody is. Those are the guys that have stayed in the business as long as they have. There's a reason that they've stuck around this long. So I want to be one of those guys. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Okay.
I was waiting for the sports analogy, but then you came with off the bench.
Well, I said that twice. I used that one twice. I know. All right.
Yeah,
I won't use coming off the bench again.
It's a very good analogy. That's why it's used so frequently. And since we're in Los Angeles, where the Dodgers are
sure,
still in the front of everybody's memory, mind.
Yeah. Now, as a Chicago guy, did you go to Second City and all of those?
Yes,
you did.
Yes,
you went going to see those improv shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much from those guys. I had a roommate named David Pasquesi, who is a brilliant improv guy. He's part of a comedy team named TJ and Dave, and they work out of Second City. And I went to see, I was right before COVID hit, right before the shutdown. I was in Chicago working on something, being directed by a fellow CAD, Paul McCrane, and things were starting to shut down. And I went to see this two-man improv show called TJ and Dave with my old friend. And these guys come out on stage from separate sides of the stage, not knowing anything about what is about to happen, and they end up, it's alchemy. Like, they come up with these stories, and by the end of an hour, they've each played like 20 different characters. That, to me, the ability to do that is something that I aspire to have, that nimble a mind, and to be that extraordinarily gifted with improv is something that I've always just admired. So like I said, I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure it out for myself. But so I'm still a student. I also teach, and I just try to learn from everybody and everything as much as I can.
Acting?
I teach acting. I've been teaching off and on for about 20 years at a place called the Ruskin School out here. There's a man named John Ruskin who was Sanford Meisner's assistant for many years, and every once in a while he'll bring me off the bench. He'll call me up and say, "Will you come in?" And so I teach a master class to the kids out there, and they're great. And I teach every age, from young kids just starting out in their early 20s to retirees. There's a guy in my class who's a retired lawyer who at 52, decided that his lifelong dream was to become an actor. And so he started taking acting classes. And this is I think I had him in my class about 5 years ago, and now he's like a steadily working character actor, which is great. Mm-hmm. It gives me such a joy. You want to hear a crazy story?
Sure.
I'm looking at this guy, and I'm sitting in the front row, and I keep looking. I know this face. And I said, have we met before? He got up and did a scene, and he sat back down, and I said, have we met before? And long story short, after class was over, we figured out. He said, where'd you go to school? And after I left Duke, I moved to D.C. for 3 years, and I started doing theater in Washington. And then I finished my college. I got my degree at Fordham University in New York City at Lincoln Center. And I said, Michael Lipman. He said, yeah. I said, were you in Bob Stone's political science? Turns out that we were in the same class at Fordham together. And I graduated in 87. We both graduated the same year. He went off to become a lawyer for 35, 40 years. And then he came back. And so he was sitting in my acting class. And this is a guy that I was in class, like we hung out together. Like we went to bars together in New York City in the mid 80s. And I hadn't seen him in 45 years. And suddenly he's, so everybody can pursue their dream. But I just thought it was so lovely. What a wonderful turn of events that he ended up sitting in my classroom. And I'm directing this guy that I knew long ago.
That's a great story. Has there ever been a moment on a set when you've thought, I can't believe this is my job?
Oh, yeah.
Or,
oh, yeah.
I can't believe this is my job.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so many. I'm constantly, like I said, I mean, I'm still, that thrill of pulling on to a lot or whatever. I remember doing Air Force One, and there was a scene where there was a helicopter landing, and Glenn Close was in the helicopter. She was landing in the helicopter, and I'm running across the White House lawn. And I had to meet the helicopter at the exact moment that it hit its mark, its landing mark. And I just remember thinking, and it was Glenn Close getting out of the helicopter. And I remember like, holy shit. And I had to get her out of the helicopter, and I'm running across the lawn back to the White House. And I remember thinking, I'm running across the White House lawn in a movie with Glenn Close. How crazy was my life? And then working with Dustin Hoffman on an ill-fated show called Luck that Michael Mann produced with David Milch. And I mean, Dustin Hoffman and Robert Duvall. I had an experience on a movie called Stars Fell on Henrietta, where I'm acting in a scene with Robert Duvall, who is one of my true heroes. Duvall and my mom did an episode of The Untouchables together in the 50s. And I remember sitting down with him and talking to him about his experience working with, I think it was either The Untouchables or an Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And sitting in a chair next to Robert Duvall, having a conversation with him about working with my mother on a TV show in the 50s.
Wow.
Going, what is my life? And I guess that's what it was always meant to be, but it's always so wonderfully surreal to me that I have gotten to meet and in many cases work with so many of my heroes that.
But they say don't meet your heroes.
I've met a couple of heroes that I wish I hadn't.
Oh, really?
And we're not going to talk about it here.
Okay.
But no, there are a couple of people that have disappointed me. But for the most part, most of the heroes, most of the people that I mean, certainly all of the CADS, and I've got a lot of heroes in that group, because I just admire them all so much. But yeah, I've gotten to work with, I mean, from Ms. Close to Mr. Duvall, and I've been very, very lucky. I've been very lucky, and I'm always aware of how lucky I am to have had these experiences and being able to, for whatever reason, if it's Michael Mann or Mike Nichols putting me in a lovely scene with Tom Hanks in Charlie Wilson's War, and I'm sitting across from Mr. Hanks, and I'm just thinking, gosh, I'm really, I feel lucky to be able to get to do what I do, to get out of bed every day and say I'm an actor. I'm very proud of it.
You know, sometimes when I'm talking to someone in Still Here Hollywood, I get lost because I'm enjoying the conversation so much, and I forget the important things I'm supposed to ask, and I have to go back through my head or on the prompter and and go, okay, I should have asked, okay.
Can I ask you? I've got a question.
Yeah.
The title Still Here Hollywood. Where did that come from?
My producer.
Yeah.
He came up with it.
Yeah.
It was kind of because I was here working for like 30 years.
Yeah.
And then I went away. I went home to Chicago. Well, I got fired from my job. And I went home to Chicago to look after my parents. They were in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to help them out. Mm-hmm. And when Jim contacted me and said, I have this idea for a podcast, and I think you'd be good at hosting it.
You're great at it.
And you know, he said, you want to give it a shot? And, you know, I'm flattered, number one, that anybody remembers me, and number two, that someone would ask. And I think retirement is highly overrated.
Mm-hmm. I don't plan on it.
If you don't have if your mind isn't working on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So his thinking was, you know, as long as you were here, and then you disappeared for like 10 years, and
remind people that you're still here.
You're still here, Hollywood. Yeah. You know,
the thing that pops to mind, and like I said, I've watched a lot of them, and so many of the people that you've had in this chair, whom I know. I was watching lovely Chad Lowe the other day, and having you talking about, you know, that conversation. I mean, Chad is somebody I've known for a long time, and talking about that the rivalry, and you know, with Rob, sweet guy. Everybody that you've talked to, a lot of whom I've had a chance to work with, Morgan Fairchild or Chad or Grant Show. Grant Show and I did a pilot together in 1987 that was a sort of a prequel to Dynasty, with Steven Weber and Jane Krakowski and Eric LaSalle and Dylan Walsh and a lot of people that went on to do great stuff. I find that everybody that you talk to that has these wonderful stories, Gregory Harrison, like all of these wonderful actors, we're still here, and we're still here, and we're still in it for a reason. I think like they're all really genuinely good people that have survived.
I was afraid a little bit when Jim first told me about the title Still Here Hollywood, because once many years ago when I wanted to do a series, you know, Where Are They Now?
Yeah.
People don't want to talk as though they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
And I was afraid this title might have a similar effect.
Well,
what do you mean?
The thing that came to mind was the Stephen Sondheim song from Follies.
Oh,
do you know that?
I'm still here.
Yeah,
good times and bad times. I've seen it all.
And I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, plush velvet sometimes just pretzels and beer, and I'm here.
Yep.
And that's the actor's life. That's it right there.
What a great song.
It's a great song. It's a great song. Yeah.
Which director changed the way you felt about acting?
The way I felt about acting. I've always loved acting. The directors that I've been lucky enough to work with a bunch of directors that have also been actors. So I love Jonathan Frakes. If you haven't spoken to Jonathan Frakes is a guy that he directed me in an episode of Star Trek when I was young, one of the first things that I did in 90 or 91, early on. And Jonathan had been an actor for a long time. He was an actor on the show. And so he directed me, and we became pals from that. LeVar Burton is another one. Directors who know how to talk to actors and love actors and empathize with actors and know how we think and all of our foibles and insecurities. And so I love working with directors who have been actors, for starters, changed the way I think about acting. I mean, everybody's different. I mean, I've had some really, I would say Michael Mann was a big one, because Michael is an actor Michael is a director that casts the right actor for the right role and doesn't spend a lot of time directing the actors. I remember when I got cast in Public Enemies, and I pulled him aside and I said, at some point I'd love to talk to you about my character. And he's so meticulous. His production team puts a whole dossier together on your character. I was playing a real life guy. It was about John Dillinger, so all of the people in the movie were real guys. And Michael said, I hired you to be the guy. You show up and be the guy. Now there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, he did a lot of directing of me, but there are certain directors that I've worked with that are like directing traffic, and they like to move the furniture around and say, you stand there and say that, and you do a lot of television where you get hired on a Monday and you're in a fitting on Wednesday and you're on set on Thursday, and you don't have a lot of time and you got to bang it out. But if you have the luxury of working with a director who loves to rehearse, which I do very much, I love those directors. I love those directors that like to get in the mud and shape it and help you find your way. I like being directed, and I like rehearsing. So if it's a director like Mike Nichols that I was lucky enough to be on a show with him, if they obviously he loves actors, so I love being with directors who love actors and know how to work with you. So I wouldn't say there was any one particular that changed what I thought about acting, because I'm always trying to figure out how to be a better actor myself. So I'm constantly watching movies and seeing plays and trying to figure out how to be better.
I got to interview Mike Nichols once. He was great.
Oh, so great.
For Carrie Fisher's book. If I happen to come across it while I'm watching.
Postcards
from the Edge.
Sure.
He directed that. And that was, what a cast. What a great movie that was. And
what's the great Shirley MacLaine line? I twirled.
I twirled up. And you weren't wearing any
up.
underwear. Yeah. Well, yes, that was great. I first got introduced to him through his work. My brother went to University of Chicago, and they were, Mike Nichols and Elaine May came, I believe, out of there, and Second City, speaking of which. But what fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's just one of the greats. To have come out of, there's a wonderful autobiography of him, or a biography of Mike by Mark Harris, that is so, if you haven't read it, it's a great, great read, and it's a great listen. George Newbern, who's a terrific actor, does the audiobook, and it talks about his whole trajectory from starting out in improv and in Chicago to Nichols and May, and then having, I think, 3 or 4 plays running simultaneously on Broadway and all of the films and stuff. I mean, he's somebody that is
head and shoulders,
gold standard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just watching his movies, just as an example, watching Mike Nichols' movies or plays, whether it's Spamalot or whatever, watching the way he does things and creates things is what makes me a better actor. Watching the original production of The Real Thing, which is a play that I was lucky enough to do with Glenn Close and Jeremy Irons, I want to say it was 87, maybe? Mid to late 80s. There was a period when seeing that play, when Steppenwolf came to town in New York, the Steppenwolf Theater Company, and seeing what those guys, Sinise and Malkovich and Laurie Metcalf and that whole crew that came and suddenly just seismically changed theater when they came. I saw a production of Bomb and Gilead at Circle Rep, and I saw that, and then True West. That's really, for me, that was the moment when I walked into that theater and they were blasting Bruce Springsteen music as you were walking into the theater. And I was with my mom, and I turned to her and I said, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to be a part of that kind of theater that moves people. And there was a lot of stuff going on at that really, really creative time in the early 80s in New York, one of which was Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson in Much Ado About Nothing, and Cyrano de Bergerac and Rep. And it was just like, I was just a sponge, and I just wanted to see everything and go, all right, I'm gonna give that a shot.
Emma Thompson's one of the funniest people I've ever met.
I've never met her. Actually, no, I did meet her. I met her once, and I was very shy. But yeah.
She's marvelous. Yeah. And the other one who you just mentioned, who I'm crazy about, is Laurie Metcalf.
Oh, wow.
She can do anything.
She can do anything. She's in a play in New York right now called Little Bear Ridge Road that is supposed to be spectacular, and I think it's closing soon. I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to see it, but she's a phenomenal actor on stage and on television and everything.
She came to everybody's consciousness through Roseanne, a TV sitcom.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that odd?
Yeah,
it's true. But she's become one of the preeminent theater actors of the last 25 years, for sure.
I saw her once at Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago.
Yeah.
Which I think she had something to do with the organization of.
Yeah.
Anyway.
When I was in Chicago, right before the lockdown for COVID, and I'd gone to see Second City, and I went to see a production of a play called Bug by Tracy Letts with Carrie Coon, his wife. And I'd never been to the Steppenwolf Theater Company before, to the theater, and I walked in, and for a guy who, as a kid, seeing their shows are kind of what got into my DNA and what made me want to be an actor. And walking into that theater and seeing Carrie in a play by Tracy Letts, who a couple of years later, I would end up working with on a series. We did Winning Time, this HBO series about the Lakers, and I played Chick Hearn, the broadcaster. And I went up to Carrie. It was like being in church. I walked into that theater. It was like being in church for me, seeing all the posters on the walls, and that was a kind of a seminal moment.
The new Goodman Theater is a beautiful theater.
Is it really?
Yes,
I haven't been there yet. Yeah. Such a great theater town, Chicago. Such a great town.
Good food too.
Good food, good city, good people.
And there's the Cubs.
But just Midwestern people. No disrespect to anybody else, but there's something about going back to Chicago. My mom's from St. Louis, but Midwestern folks, there's just a vibe. There's a kindness there and a salt of the earth that I really fall for.
And we'll be right back. I was thinking when you were talking about that, about Picasso of all things.
Yeah.
He had never been to Chicago, but he presented it with that sculpture that is he's so known for it. The city is so, you know exactly where it is when you see a picture of it.
Yeah.
It's like the Sydney Opera House.
Or if you're watching the Blues Brothers.
Or if you're watching the Blues Brothers.
Where the cop car is driving, and I think Belushi turns to Aykroyd as they're driving. He's like, "Hey, it's the Picasso." That big giant red thing in the middle.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, it's a great city.
What's the hardest part of being really good at the smaller part?
Maybe the pressure that's on you to deliver. I had a wonderful small part in a movie called Lovely and Amazing, directed by Nicole Holofcener. And it was one scene with Catherine Keener, and it was early on. I hadn't done a lot of movies, and I remember thinking, I really want to make an impression. You don't want to try too hard, but you want it to pop. I wanted to make an impression, and so I put pressure on myself to be good, to stand out, and I think that's kind of can be the kiss of death for an actor. If you're trying to stand out, if you know that you're in a small part, if you're like one scene or something, and you're trying to stand out, don't do that. And I did that with. I'll come back to the Catherine Keener thing, but I did that with Stars Fell on Henrietta, a movie that I did with Robert Duvall. And I really had kind of one scene with Duvall. James Keach was directing, and I remember, and Duvall was just my hero. And I remember thinking, I'm going to give myself a limp, and I'm going to be chewing gum, and I'm going to do all sorts of this kind of just character shit. I'm going to stand out. And so Duvall kind of walks up to the car, and I got a Texas accent, and I'm chewing gum, and I gave myself a little limp, and I'm like, walk up, and I'm talking to him, and he's kind of looking at me like, all right, I'm going to go with this, and director pulls me aside. He's like, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? Because I hadn't auditioned for this. He directed me in an episode of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. And when we were done, he said, there's a little part for you in a scene I'm doing with Duvall and Aidan Quinn and Francis Fisher, Billy Bob Thornton. Lovely little movie. He said, I've got one scene with Duvall. He said, we're going to shoot it in a couple of months in Texas. I said, great, I'm in. So I'm just working my ass off. I'm like chewing the gum and doing the thing and like talking like this, and I've got a little bit of a limp. And he pulls me aside. He says, "What's with the gum and the limp and all of the? Just say just you're acting opposite Robert Duvall, man. Are you trying to outact Robert Duvall? It's not going to happen. They're going to be looking at him. He was simple and still and full, and I'm out there just working my butt off." He's like, "Lose the limp, lose the gum, just be," and that was a big lesson for me. That was one that I kind of checked off in my box. And I went, all right, yeah, just lose all the shtick and just learn how to listen. So I've had to file that one away and refer to that several times. Whenever I find myself trying to be interesting, don't. You will lose every time, especially if you're on screen with Robert Duvall. I had a scene on this movie with called Lovely and Amazing, and I was a shopkeeper, and I decided that I was going to, be, suddenly out of the blue, I was going to be German. I was going to be this just really over-the-top German character, very, very swishy and just big, and I didn't tell anybody I was going to do. I didn't tell the director I was going to do this. I said, I'm going to try something. And she said, I think it's going to work, but can you give me like the normal, like a regular take? Just tone it down. Tone it way the fuck down. And I did. And when I saw the finished product, she left in the much bigger version. And so I credit myself with at least having the balls to try that, and I was surprised that they ended up putting that on film, but it actually worked in the scene. But it's one of the rare instances where I had gone back to the well of trying to be interesting. If you try to be interesting, you're screwed. So, but in that particular case, it somehow worked. So if you ever see Lovely and Amazing, I'm Willie the shopkeeper. And it is one of the strangest things you'll ever see me do. And it's also kind of my favorite thing. I kept it on my demo reel for like 25 years. It was like one of my things that I just couldn't get rid of, even though it's 25 years ago, and I look like I don't look anything like I do now. I would look like a baby in that, but I look like it somehow it worked. So,
who's a scene partner? Who taught you more than you realized at the time?
Wow. I mean, certainly Duvall. I had a scene with Dustin Hoffman on the show Luck, and we had one very complicated scene with a lot of choreography of cars coming in, and there was a lot of moving parts, and I was very much in awe of working with another one of my heroes. And at the end of the first take, he pulled me aside, and I said, we'd gotten to know each other a little bit before that. We'd had some other scenes before that, and I said, are you okay? You feeling okay today? And he said, I'm a little nervous today. And I said, why are you nervous? You're Dustin Hoffman. He said, well, he said, I haven't done TV in a long time. I haven't done television in 35, 40 years. And I'm thinking, Dustin Hoffman is telling me that he's nervous. When you asked me what I learned, it was, no matter how big they are, we all put our pants on one leg at a time. I mean, I work with people who think they are this, but at the end of the day, we're all just people trying to get through the day and do our jobs. So for one of the biggest stars in the world and somebody that I admired so greatly to be that vulnerable in that moment, because I get nervous when the red light's on, or when I walk out on stage. I still have nerves, even after doing this for 40 years. I still get nervous. So when Dustin Hoffman says, "Yeah, I'm kind of nervous," I thought, okay, then it's okay. Then I'm going to be okay too.
We can do this.
We can do this. Yeah. I mean, so I learned from that. And Glenn Close said the same thing to me too. As we were running across, we did that take where I had to meet the helicopter. We did that several times because the first time I got to the mark way before the helicopter had landed, and I blew it. And then the next time the helicopter landed and she came out and she tripped as she was getting out of the helicopter. There's a lot of stuff that went wrong in the initial takes of that. And I remember her saying to me, it was a big action movie with a lot of, it was Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman and planes exploding and stuff. And she's like, I've never done one of these kinds of movies before. And there was a vulnerability there that it reminded me that, we're all part of the same team. We're all collaborating, trying to make this thing together. Even though your name is above the title, you're part of the ensemble. You're part of one of the wheels that makes the thing go.
Right. What's the worst piece of career advice you've ever been given?
That's a tough one.
Pardon me while I drink.
I'm going to drink too. This is vodka, right? Ooh. That's good vodka. The worst piece of advice. I've been given a lot of advice. I would say probably the worst piece of advice wasn't really advice, but I remember a casting director saying to me very early on, "You're not handsome enough to be a leading man. You're not charactery enough to be a character actor." This is when I was 25, 26, first starting out. And when somebody says to me, young kid, "You're not handsome enough to be a leading man, so you're not going to make it as a leading man, so cross that off your list. You're not charactery enough to be a character actor. I don't really know what you are. You should probably be like a TV weatherman or a game show host. You should probably try doing that. So maybe acting is not your thing." And I was reading it was a casting director, and I was at Universal Studios, and I was reading for an episode of some show, and I had been working a bit, and it wasn't really advice that they gave me, but it was more of it lit a fire under my ass for sure, and it made me want to go, okay, I'm going to prove that person wrong. I'll show them. But they said you should probably try something else, and it gave me a fire to keep going and to get better and to prove them wrong. I don't know that I've ever gotten any bad career advice that I can think of that I'm happy to say, but I've gotten some good advice and a lot of encouragement from people, and I've been lucky enough to have grown up around a lot of people that have had some success and also a lot of failure too. So I've been able to watch. I watched people that were at great heights, that had done very well. That things fade.
A roller coaster.
It's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster. But I don't think I've gotten any bad advice. Not yet. Do you have any bad advice for me?
Well, let's see. What can I say?
Give me some bad advice.
One last question, and I'm just going to throw a name out here and let you go with it.
Oh.
Dana Bash.
Who's that?
Okay. Is that your response?
No. Dana Bash. Dana Bash is... we met 10 years ago. We were set up by a mutual friend, and I had sort of gotten to a point where I'd sort of given up on relationships. I think at that point I thought, I'm going to get a dog and a pipe and move to Ireland and just read books and forget about falling in love again. And then I met this person and just kind of changed my life. I'd spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., spent three and a half years there, in between stints in North Carolina and before I moved to New York. So I knew the town well, and we had a lot of mutual friends. I had produced a movie that I shot in D.C. several years earlier, and a couple of people that were associated with that I became friends with. And ultimately, years later, I was in Baltimore shooting House of Cards. And I called them up and I said, I'm up here in Baltimore. I got several days off. Can I come down and visit? And they said, oh, what are you doing? Are you single right now? And I said, yeah, I'm actually single, and I'm kind of fine, and I'm good. He said, well, we want you to meet somebody, and she'll probably change your life. And she's changed my life. And we've been together, we'll be 13 years together in May, which is amazing. And she's somebody that I admire, particularly now more than, I've admired her for a long time for her work ethic and her chutzpah and the job that she does as a journalist and keeping that First Amendment alive. But the way she comports herself now in these very fraught times, to say the least, is extraordinary. So she's incredible. I'm proud to be her partner. Yeah. She's definitely my better half.
Nope, don't say that. My shrink,
Yeah.
when I said that once about someone, said, you're not half a person. You're a whole person.
Oh, well.
Remember that. That was shrink talk.
Yeah.
But it's always stuck with me.
Yeah, she's incredible. I'm very blessed. I'm very, very lucky. Feel very, very
You
lucky.
live in fantasy land, and she lives in CNN world.
She lives in the real world.
Right.
She lives in the real world. I think she's baffled by she will often say, I don't know why you're not just getting offered leads in movies. Why do you have to audition? Why can't they just ask you to do a series? And I'm like, well, sometimes they do that. That happens to some people, but I think she's always thrilled for me when I put a W on the board, like when I got cast in the play. She's always rooting for me, which is really cool, and she's always happy for me when I get a good job, and I think she knows after all this time together how tough it is to sustain and to keep going in our business and doing what we do. So it's nice to be supported in that way, and then watching her and the way her star has shined for so many years, and getting the recognition that she gets. She's beloved in her profession, and she's excellent. She's excellent, and that makes me feel very good. I'm very, very proud of her. I'm very proud. I couldn't begin to touch to imagine doing what she does for a living every single day. She works 23 hours a day.
I'll bet.
And raises a beautiful 14-year-old son, and she's remarkable. So my heart is full when I think about her.
Good. Thanks, Spencer. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Steve.
It was a lot of fun.
What a treat. Thank you.
For me.
I could have gone on for hours.
Still Here Hollywood is a production of the Still Here Network. All things technical run by Justin Zangerly. Theme music by Brian Sanashin. And executive producer is Jim Lichtenstein.